Live from Quito, Ecuador, I'm Sweeney Gray and this is From the South, the evening news brief from Telesur English. We start this new edition right now. Venezuela's ambassador to the UN, Rafael Ramirez, firmly condemned as illegal a meeting called for by the U.S. delegation to discuss Venezuela at the UN Security Council. Joined by the representatives of Venezuela's allies, Bolivia, Russia and China, Ramirez said that very few countries had responded to the U.S. call and that it was not true that the Security Council had met to talk about Venezuela.
This is a real violation of the principles and the purposes of the United Nations Declaration. It's a lie from the United States that the Security Council met to discuss about Venezuela. A lie that is presented to the world and in particular to the Venezuelan people.
Meanwhile, the Venezuelan government has held a crucial meeting with creditors to discuss restructuring and refinancing its debt. More than 400 domestic and international bondholders and other creditors have been attending the meeting in Caracas, just across the road from the Miraflores presidential palace. On Sunday, President Nicolas Maduro said that Venezuela had already reached a financing agreement with Russia.
They're betting that Venezuela will default. But never. Venezuela will never default. It will never happen. Venezuela will always have a clear strategy, and now our strategy is to renegotiate and refinance all of Venezuela's external debt, because we will not continue down this road. Tomorrow, Monday 13, we begin the first round of renegotiation and refinancing. Tomorrow, Monday 13, we begin the first round of renegotiation and the sovereign refinancing of foreign debt and of all international commitments of the Republic. I can announce here that the international commitments with the Chinese People's Republic go perfectly well and will continue to advance in that way. I can announce we have reached a renegotiation and financing agreement with the Russian Federation, and this week the document of refinancing of all of the Venezuelan debt with Russia will be signed in Moscow.
El documento de refinanciamiento de toda la deuda venezolana con Rusia.
414 investors have confirmed their attendance. Investors, holders of Venezuelan foreign debt, 414. That is, today, 91% of all holders of Venezuela's foreign debt.
European Union foreign ministers have agreed to an arms embargo against Venezuela. Meeting in Brussels, the foreign ministers confirmed the ban announced last week on the sale of any military equipment that could be used allegedly to suppress demonstrations. They also agreed to the basis for future sanctions on named government officials, on possible future sanctions. The Spanish government has been leading the push for sanctions against Venezuela. Earlier, we spoke with Mark Weisbrot, co-director of the Center for Economic and Policy Research in Washington, to find out what new sanctions could mean for Venezuela's debt. Let's hear what he said.
The whole purpose of these sanctions, the economy, Venezuelan economy to recover, that's their effort. And of course, this is a very destructive thing to do, given the political situation and everything else. What they're basically saying is we don't want a negotiated or an electoral or a peaceful solution. We want to cripple the economy. We want to keep the economy from recovering so that people will rebel against the government. So they're really promoting violence in that sense.
Also, the Venezuelan government is once again looking to start talks with the opposition at a meeting scheduled to take place on November 15th in the Dominican Republic. The goal is to reach agreements that allow for political and peaceful coexistence in the country. Details in this report.
The Dominican Republic will be the stage for a new round of talks between the Venezuelan government and the opposition. The date chosen for this meeting is Wednesday, November 15th, as announced by Communications Minister Jorge Rodriguez via his Twitter account. This comes in response to President Nicolás Maduro's repeated calls to sit down and talk with Venezuelan opposition. This is a process that has stalled for over 4 years and has not been fruitful due to the right's systematic refusal to move forward.
Dialogue is absolutely essential. There isn't another solution anywhere in the world for fractured societies to rebuild consensus. Consensus and national unity are essential in order to achieve progress, to achieve democracy.
For the first time since the Venezuelan government began insisting on the need for political consensus to achieve peace in the country, the opposition appears to be open to negotiations. This was confirmed by one of their spokesmen, Voluntad Popular Representative Luis Florido. This behavior stands in contrast with previous meetings where they systematically refused to have a dialogue. Internal divisions within the MOT coalition after their defeat in last month's regional elections could be, according to analysts, one of the reasons that they're now answering to President Maduro's calls.
We need a democratic, serious-minded, and transparent opposition. And along with this democratic and transparent opposition, we need to bury any violent, terrorist opposition that does not believe in dialogue and that is constantly looking for any way of avoiding a political solution in our country.
Coinciding with this announcement, the United States is imposing new sanctions on Venezuela. Sanctions that would be added to those by the European Union and Canada. According to Venezuela's communications minister, these are not coincidence. Stability in the Latin American country is not in the interest of the United States, Jorge Rodriguez said on Twitter.
With ups and downs, the United States has always maintained a policy of psychopathic violence, which is fundamentally anti-democratic. Do not forget that the empire is a dictatorship and does not know how to work in a democratic environment like other countries.
As announced by the government, a preliminary joint document is being prepared in order to reach agreements on the topics of coexistence and peace. At a very important moment for Venezuela, when it's about to celebrate a third round of elections in barely 6 months. In this case, municipal elections on December the 10th.
The Puerto Rican independence leader, Oscar Lopez Rivera, is making his first ever visit to Cuba. Lopez Rivera spent 36 years in jail in the United States, some of that time alongside one of the 5 Cubans held for alleged espionage.
For many years, I've been wanting to come to Cuba, and now that I'm here, I want to express my deepest gratitude and love to the people of Cuba. I wish them a lot of strength to resist, and I'm here to tell them that the Puerto Rican people are going to stand beside you until the last minute. I believe Puerto Rico is suffering the worst moment in its history, especially because of the way that the U.S. government is treating us. Our situation reflects how far the U.S. government can go. In Puerto Rico, those who have ruled the island since the first times of the colony, they can't rule any longer. No Puerto Rican can govern in Puerto Rico because it's Washington and Wall Street who rule there.
Our correspondent in Havana, Laura Prada, has more.
Hello, yes, indeed. Last night arrived to Havana the Puerto Rican independence fighter Oscar Lopez Rivera on a visit that would last until November 26. This visit was announced in the month of May, the day of his liberation, on a phone call made by the Cuban hero and president of the Cuban Institute of Friendship with the People, Fernando González, a close friend to Oscar Lopez because they both share prison while in United States. This visit has a special commemoration because it happens on the days that Cuba is remembering the first anniversary of the loss of Fidel Castro. Oscar will visit also Santiago de Cuba and Santa Clara. He will also be receiving the Order of Solidarity and he will have a meeting for sharing ideas and thoughts with a university community in the University of Havana. He will also be received at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and today, right now, is happening a big celebration, big welcoming at the Cuban Institute of Friendship with the People. This is all I have for now of the visit of Oscar Lopez to Cuba. I get back to you.
Lower Prada there with that report. The Montana Energy Company that was awarded a $300 million contract to repair Puerto Rico's power grid in the wake of Hurricane Maria is facing scrutiny over the inflated fee it charged the island state-run utility. Whitefish Energy Holdings charged the Puerto Rico Electric Power Company PRESA $319 an hour per linesman, almost 17 times the hourly rate that the Puerto Rico-based workers were actually paid. According to experts, the fee is well above any reasonable charge, even in an emergency situation. Whitefish have had their contract cancelled in light of the scandal, but will continue repairs until November 30th. A delegation from the Caribbean Development Bank was present at the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Germany. The delegation wanted to reiterate the need for climate action and resilient recovery, especially after this year's hurricanes devastated the region. The bank will sign a $24 million agreement with the European Investment Bank for post-disaster reconstruction.
What we wanted to send is basically a united and...
More news in a minute. Stay with us. A 6.5 magnitude earthquake has struck the Pacific coast of Costa Rica, causing massive panic in the capital San Jose, which was most affected by the tremors. And while there was no fatalities as a direct result of the quake, at least 3 people had heart attacks. 2 in Haku and 1 in Coronado. One building was reportedly evacuated after the wall showed signs of collapsing. The Costa Rican government reported electricity loss and rock slides obstructing the roadways in some areas. Those affected by natural disasters in Peru say they have been ignored by the government for more than 6 months. Some campaigners argue that the reconstruction program prioritizes the interests of building contractors rather than the people.
A large number of families in Chosica, in eastern Lima, still live in buildings damaged by the flooding. Many people say they were forced to make minimal repairs of their own, so they can keep living in their houses. One of them is Aida, who could only build wooden rooms on top of the ruins of her home.
We still need a lot of things.
Haven't you received any help?
Not at all. We'll present complaints to the Central Committee, but no help has been given to the third zone either.
How about the authorities?
Nobody, sir.
People see the government's offers to rebuild as false. This wire net holding the rocks brought by the overflows are proof of that. More than 6 months have passed and they are about to collapse.
This will gather more water, and the floods could be worse.
The rains are coming and we are organizing to do an intense cleanse of the streets because they can turn into rivers. We are very worried.
The government assigned almost $8 billion to the reconstruction works, to the regions damaged by the El Niño phenomenon. According to analysts, that money is not solving the basic needs of the more than 70,000 families who lost their homes.
The state is not interested in small things related to the people, but only about the greater matters related to investments, rentability, increase in the productive activity of the country. They're not focused on the people. They only care about public and private investments.
To Pedro Ferradas, expert in risk management, the other forsaken area is the one of the small agrarians, where more than 20,000 kilometers of water channels were affected or destroyed and more than 50,000 hectares were lost.
We can grow nothing without water, or if there's a great lack of it, you can't farm or cultivate nothing. If we don't reactivate the lands, in some cases the people have done it, the campesinos, but some others in need of heavy machinery haven't received any machine.
According to analysts, the government is distracted with the renewing of building program directors, while thousands of Peruvians don't have a proper place to live.
mientras miles de peruanos residen.
Volunteers have opened a new public library in Mexico City, populated with books damaged or buried in rubble following September's 7.1 magnitude earthquake, which destroyed much of the city.
Marlene works with books. She is responsible for recovering and restoring them. These books survived the earthquake that hit Mexico on September 19th, and now can be enjoyed by new readers.
It's just amazing how culture emerged from the rubble. The will to keep these stories alive, despite everything, is incredible. I was very moved when we picked up each book and sat to read these stories.
More than 2,000 books full of dust that before the earthquake were part of private collections are now available at Tepetl House, a refuge for writers persecuted for defending their ideas.
One of the books that we found is called Flowers Among Ruins. I think this shows exactly what this project is about, to create something despite the pain and the suffering.
For every single person working on this project, these books are full of symbolism.
The books show what really happened that day. They represent the people that went through that experience and those who are not here with us today.
The bookshelves are filling up with books that come from nearby buildings owned by those who lost their homes.
I think we found a special strength in the library. It helped us rebuild.
This library opens today in memory of the tragedy. This place is now one of reflection and knowledge. They have called it the 19th of September Library.
Pablo Pérez García, Telesur, Ciudad de México.
Migrants from Honduras, Guatemala and El Salvador gathered at the Mexican-U.S. border, demanding asylum and insisting that migration is not a crime. 44 Central American asylum seekers, including 14 minors, stood at the Mexican border to appeal for their immigration rights. They make up the remaining group of the original 150 people who set out for Mexico on October 9th. Each year, around 200,000 undocumented migrants, mostly from Central America, pass through Mexico in an attempt to reach the United States. On the way, many become victims of robberies, kidnappings, and murders at the hands of criminal gangs, and many others are killed while trying to traverse the 3,000-kilometer border.
We demand the right to asylum. Many of us come fleeing from our countries. If not, I do not think anyone would bring their children and expose them to this danger.
Salvadorian officials are working to develop a permanent solution for the hundreds of thousands of Salvadorians living in the United States under temporary protected status, according to El Salvador's President Sanchez Seren. While the TPS will be officially revoked for Nicaraguans from January 2019, there has been no official word concerning what will happen to the status of the around 190,000 Salvadorians covered by the program, which expires March 2018. General and parliamentary elections will take place in Chile on November 19th. Let's take a look at some of the legislation that will define the upcoming vote.
The goal of these young candidates from the Broad Front Party is to see an increase of women legislators in the Chilean Congress.
In Chile,
women have just 15.8% representation in Congress. We're below the average in Latin America, which is over 25%.
The electoral reforms approved by the current government have opened the door to change the structure of Congress. One of these reforms, the shares law, that at least 40% of parliamentary candidacies from political parties should be occupied by women.
There's a current majority within the parliament that decides whether women have the right to abortion or not, which decides what happens with the care of children, of the disabled, the elderly, things that were culturally taken care of by women.
Another important reform is one that prohibits economic contributions from private companies to campaigns.
Now that's forbidden, and for that reason, parties now have access to public funds as a main source of finance.
The intention of these reforms is to avoid, at least during the electoral period, that candidates align with any economic power operating in the country. But perhaps the most visible change of the measure is the limitations that parties now have when it comes to investment in campaign promotion.
Before, the right wing used to use its power to splurge a tremendous amount on campaigns, but now they're limited in their investment on advertising, and that has allowed a more equal election between all parties.
The complex parliamentary election system inherited from the dictatorship has been eliminated. This mechanism, known as binomial voting, used to guarantee the majority in Congress to the right, and so as a consequence, its elimination opens the door for a broader level of representation.
The only thing we expect is that people are able to choose, to have more possibilities and not to vote for the same people, and to give a chance to new candidates.
Nevertheless, the ghost of abstention surrounds this election after what happened in the recent municipal ballot, where only 35% of registered voters participated.
And we'll be back very soon, so stay with us. With many of their leaders in jail, political parties in Catalonia are getting ready for regional elections in December, called for by Madrid. Our correspondent in Madrid, Joan Ortiz, has more details.
A number of political parties in Barcelona are preparing their campaigns ahead of December's snap regional elections. The far-left, pro-Catalan, Popular Unity Candidacy, or CUP, led by Carles Rivera, have announced they will run on December 21st. The longtime left-wing party, the ERC, is participating with the support of some of the recently jailed Catalan leaders, as is PDeCAT, although the two separatist parties have not yet agreed on a united independence platform. PDeCAT's deposed leader, Carles Puigdemont, is in Belgium awaiting news on his extradition. In a recent interview with a Belgian newspaper, he said that he won't run as head of the party, but support a pro-Republic candidate and will accept the results of the election.
Tensions between Israel and Palestine's Islamic Jihad movement have risen after a spokesperson for Israel's defense ministry warned against any retaliation for the Gaza tunnel attack that took the lives of 13 Palestinians 2 weeks ago. Our correspondent in Palestine has the details.
Israel and Palestinians' Islamic Jihad movement have exchanged threats 2 weeks after the Israeli army blew up a cross-border tunnel leading to Israeli territory, in which 13 Islamic Jihad and Hamas fighters were killed. Mordechai, who runs Israel's Defense Ministry liaison office with the Palestinians on Saturday, warned the Islamic Jihad not to try to retaliate for the destruction of the tunnel. Speaking in an Arabic video posted to YouTube, Mordechai addressed Islamic Jihad chief Ramadan Shallah and his deputy Ziad al-Nakhala that they would be held responsible for any revenge attack emerging from Gaza against Israel. Meanwhile, the Islamic Jihad called Mordechai's statement a declaration of war. The group's spokesman in Gaza, Dawood Shahab, confirmed that his movement is not scared by the Israeli threats at all.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his army leaders are escalating threats against the Islamic Jihad movement. We confirm that these threats don't scare us. Israel's terrorism doesn't intimidate us at all. We know our way and our role.
On October 30, the Israeli occupation forces blew up a tunnel in Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip, stretching into Israeli territory. Israel is currently holding the bodies of 5 Palestinians who were found after its army destroyed the tunnel and hopes to use them as bargaining chips to return its captive soldiers in Gaza. Noor Harazin, Teleso TV, Gaza.
And now for a roundup of the other stories making headlines around the world.
A 7.3 magnitude earthquake struck the border region between Iraq and Iran on Sunday evening, killing over 400 people and injuring almost 7,000 others. The area has continued to be hit by small and large aftershocks. Authorities advised residents to sleep outside their homes as a precautionary measure. The search is on for survivors under the rubble, and the death toll is expected to rise.
The building, which has an area of 600 square meters, was flattened by the earthquake that struck yesterday. The building fell on a 7-member family. We managed to rescue only 5 out of them, while the 2 others were killed. It was the first time for me to see an earthquake. It is a divine act that no one can prevent. It caused severe material losses.
De facto Myanmar leader Aung San Suu Kyi has promised Southeast Asian leaders that Rohingyas will return to Myanmar in 3 weeks. This follows Myanmar's repatriation agreement with Bangladesh. Suu Kyi made the assurance after concern for the welfare of the displaced Rohingyas was raised during the 31st ASEAN Plenary Summit. About 500,000 refugees have fled to Bangladesh due to Myanmar military persecution since August 25th. French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife joined former President François Hollande and other officials in front of Paris's 11th District Town Hall for a ceremony honoring the victims killed in the coordinated November 2015 attacks. They were carried out by Islamic State group militants, and 130 people were killed. Californian rock band Eagles of Death Metal performed at the ceremony as one of the attacks took place at their concert in Bataclan.
It's difficult to not remember the people that were taken from us, like our friend Nick Alexander and so many others. We miss them terribly, but we watch people give the greatest demonstration of love that can be given, to give their life for their friends. And that's something that we have a burden of responsibility to make certain that everyone knows it all the time, that that's the kind of love that exists in this world, and that it's a beautiful place.
1 week after closing Yemen's land, air and sea ports, the Saudi-led coalition says it will reopen some of them within 24 hours. The closures were in response to a ballistic missile that was intercepted over the King Khalid International Airport in Riyadh. Thousands of people took to the streets in Sana'a to protest against the Saudi-led blockade. The humanitarian crisis and a cholera epidemic has been exacerbated by the closures. An estimated 60,000 far-right nationalist demonstrators took to the streets of Poland on Saturday to mark the country's Independence Day. According to experts, it was one of the biggest gatherings of far-right activists in Europe. Demonstrators chanted slogans such as "Pure Poland," "White Poland," and "Refugees Get Out."
And with that, we've come to the end of this evening's news brief. So for these and many other stories, you can find them on our website, tellusyourtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Soini Gray. Thank you so much for watching.